Welcome, jazz legends and revolutionary minds. Today we dive deep into the essence of Charles Mingus's Mingus Ah Um, a masterpiece that reshaped the jazz landscape. Let's unravel its layers, controversies, and inspirations without any reservations. Louis, kick us off with your take on the cultural earthquaking this album unleashed in the late 50s.
Mingus shook us all awake with Mingus Ah Um, no doubt. Back in my day, we laid the bricks for the jazz house, but Mingus, he rearranged the whole building, adding rooms we never thought possible. It wasn't just music, it was a yell for freedom, for recognition of the past weaving into the present.
Mingus didn't just rearrange, he bulldozed and rebuilt. His compositions, they were a complex mess of brilliance. Traditionalists couldn't fathom it, but that's the point. Mingus was ahead, pulling jazz through time like it was nothing.
Indeed, Mingus transcended time. He was a channel, a spiritual medium for the voices of jazz past, present, and future. His work on the album wasn't just playing, it was evoking the very soul of our ancestors.
But the beauty of Mingus's chaos was in its idiosyncrasy. It defied the norms, punched through the conventions of what jazz was supposed to be. His harmonies, offbeat yet perfectly in place, they spoke a different language. You had to not just hear, but listen.
Mingus, he was a storm. His technique on the bass, it wasn't just about keeping rhythm, it was about storytelling. Every pluck, a word, every chord, a sentence, he was rewriting our history with every note.
Problem is, not everyone wanted to read. Some folks wanted the past to stay past. Mingus, he made it clear, evolve or die.
His boldness didn't just change music, it challenged our perceptions of society, politics, and ourselves. Mingus Ah Um wasn't an album. It was and still is a revolution. Let's delve deeper and see where this revolution takes us today. Today, we're diving deep into the cultural heartbeat of Mingus Ah Um, an album that's as revolutionary as it is reflective of our collective history. Louis, kick us off, would you?
You know, back in the day, jazz was the voice of the unheard. Mingus Ah Um shouted from the rooftops, mixing the old with the new in ways we hadn't quite heard before. Mingus wasn't just playing notes, he was stirring the pot, reminding us where we came from. And I gotta say, he did it with style.
Indeed, Louis. Mingus used his album as a canvas, painting with the broader strokes of our African-American heritage. It wasn't just about the music. It was a spiritual exploration, a journey back to our roots, but also a look forward into what we could become. His notes, they weren't just heard, they were felt.
A bridge between eras, no doubt. But what fascinates me is how Mingus Ah Um carved its unique slot in jazz, not as a work of art, but as a pivotal cultural artifact.
That's because Mingus wasn't afraid to be different, to be idiosyncratic. He threw the rule book out the window and wrote his own. You listen to those compositions, and you're hearing history talk back to you. The resilience, the struggle, the beauty of our culture. He wasn't just playing music, he was crafting a new language. Let's not sugarcoat it. Mingus was a complex man making complex music in a time that didn't want to hear it. Mingus Ah Um isn't just significant, it's monumental. He challenged conventions, pushed boundaries. Mingus wasn't here to play it safe, he was here to make a statement.
Absolutely, Miles. You can't talk about Mingus Ah Um without recognizing its role in dragging jazz out of the clubs and into the conversation about America's soul. It's like he was grabbing society by the collar and saying, listen, this is who we are, and we're not backing down.
Mingus Ah Um indeed stands as a testament not just to Charles Mingus' genius, but to the enduring power of jazz to speak truths that words alone cannot convey. It's a cultural landmark, a historical narrative, and a political statement, all wrapped up in one. Moving on, let's discuss the intricacies of Mingus's composition in Mingus Ah Um and how it pushed jazz forward. Miles, would you kick this off?
Mingus, man. Mingus wasn't playing around. He took the music and twisted it, you know. We're talking about a guy who didn't just play notes, he played the very essence of struggle and passion. Complexity wasn't just a byproduct, it was the intention. Goodbye pork pie hat? That ain't just a tune, it's a damn statement. True, but let's not gloss over how off-kilter some of those compositions were. It wasn't just about being complex, it's that idiosyncrasy, playing wrong right, that made it evolve. Mingus changed the game by changing the rules.
Exactly, Monk. But it's not just the off-kilter. It's also about the raw, unapologetic embrace of who we are as musicians and as a people. Mingus didn't hide behind the music. He was up front, breaking down the damn wall between composer and audience.
And let's not forget the rhythm complexities. Mingus wasn't just playing 4/4 or swinging in 3/4. He brought in changes that made you think, made you relearn how to listen.
Speaking of learning, some cats think they can just pick up an instrument and play Mingus. Nah. Mingus composed like a scientist, man. You gotta understand the formula before you can recreate the experiment.
Now hold on there, Miles. Not taking anything away from Mingus, but we gotta remember where it all started. Mingus stood on the shoulders of giants. He took what was laid down before him and ran with it, sure, but let's not act like he was the first to innovate.
Armstrong, I hear you, but we're not talking ancient history 101. Yeah, we know the roots, but Mingus? He was forward. You dig? He wasn't looking back. I respect the past, but Mingus painted it with new colors.
And those colors weren't always pretty. He wasn't afraid to show the darkness, to put discord into the melody. That's innovation. That's evolution.
So we're seeing Mingus as a bridge and as a departure, pushing both the complexity in his compositions and the emotional depth of jazz.
Yes, and no one else was quite as audacious. He dared to be different in a time when being different could cost you everything.
It's clear Mingus wasn't just playing notes. He was writing chapters of a new jazz Bible, one that wasn't afraid to question, to challenge.
Exactly. It wasn't just music, it was a manifesto. Isn't just an album, it's a landmark, marking a before and an after in jazz.
Let's dive into how Mingus brought blues and gospel into jazz with Mingus Ah Um. His fusion of these elements was nothing short of revolutionary. Charlie, your thoughts?
Mingus, man, he took the essence of our struggles and our celebrations and he laid it out bare on those tracks. Blues and gospel aren't just influences, they're the backbone of what we do. Mingus just made everyone pay attention a bit more, that's all.
You can't ignore where we came from. The blues, that's our pain and our hope wrapped into one. Gospel, that's our heart and soul speaking directly to us. Mingus, he captured that heartbeat loud and clear.
But here's the rub. Everyone acts like folding blues and gospel into jazz is some kind of neat trick. It ain't. It's the foundation. Mingus didn't discover America here. He just reminded people they were already living in it.
Yeah, well, it's one thing to stand on a foundation, another to build a house folks want to live in. Mingus built something folks hadn't quite seen before. It ain't just the blues or gospel, it's how he used them to say something new. That's the genius part.
True, but let's not act like this was a one-man show. We've all been stirring that pot. Mingus just happened to stir it in a way that made everyone look.
And stir he did. But let's not pretend like the man didn't have his own spice to add. It wasn't just about recognizing roots. It was about shouting from the rooftops, making sure nobody could ignore it.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's about making sure the roots aren't just acknowledged but celebrated. Mingus managed to capture that celebration, even in the face of struggle.
Celebration, struggle. It's all jazz. Mingus just had the guts to make his message a bit louder, a bit clearer. We're talking about it, ain't we?
Loud and clear, but not simple. Complexity and simplicity, that's the trick. Mingus played it like Monet painted water lilies, with depth beneath the surface.
Depth, yes, but let's not forget the rawness of being black in America, the rawness of needing to scream when the world wants to muffle you. Mingus didn't just play notes, he played experiences.
Rawness and depth, experiences and echoes of our ancestors' voices. That's the legacy right there. Mingus didn't just use blues and gospel. He was a conduit for their power.
A conduit, indeed. Through Mingus Ah Um, he ensured that the power of blues and gospel was not just heard, but felt, right in the gut. It's a testament to where we've been, where we are, and where we're still going. All right, let's cut to the chase here. We're diving into Mingus Ah Um and its straight-shooting commentary on the social and political scene back then. Fables of Phobos is a track we can't just breeze by. Charles didn't mince words, and neither should we. Thoughts?
When you think about what Mingus was doing, laying it out there with Fables of Phobos, The man was calling out Governor Phoebus like a sharp-tongued poet. It wasn't just jazz. It was a political rally cry without the need for a single word. That track had guts.
Yeah, but let's not romanticize it too much. Mingus was painting the ugly with beauty. It was more than politics. It was a mirror to the society, crass and unadorned. He hit those notes hard, every bass line a slap to the status quo. Had that tune out loud with lyrics, it would have started riots.
Ain't that the truth? But see, Mingus, he went beyond just calling out Phoebus. That whole album, it was like a candle in the dark for the civil rights movement. Music's got power, Miles. Mingus used his voice, his bass, to speak volumes we all felt but couldn't always articulate.
He did indeed, Luis, and it wasn't just about confrontation. There was hope, resilience in there too, don't you think?
Absolutely, Ella. There's a transcendent quality to Mingus's music. He delved deep into the pain and struggle, but also lifted the spirit. It's about seeking something higher, a call for understanding and change. Fables of Phoebus is just one example. His whole discography is a testament to fighting against injustice.
Mingus was crafting these songs like puzzles, complex, yet direct in their message. He wasn't playing music, he was preaching a sermon. We're talking about a man who'd lay down a groove that could make you weep with joy one moment and burn with anger the next. That's genius.
Genius, yes, but let's not forget the man was fed up. Fables of Phoebus wasn't just art, it was retaliation. Music as a weapon. Mingus wasn't out there trying to make friends or play it safe. He was out for blood.
And that's the heart of jazz, isn't it? Taking the raw, the real, and turning it into something that can't be ignored. Mingus made sure you couldn't just sit back and enjoy. You had to listen, really listen.
He sure made listening a profound act, a fearless move crafting Fables of Phoebus as he did. Mingus made you face the music, quite literally.
Mingus Ah Um, it's jazz as testimony, music with a mission. We can debate all night, but one thing's clear. Mingus didn't just play notes. He played with purpose.
Purpose that continues to resonate, no doubt. Mingus wasn't just about the notes on the page, but the message in the music. And that's something that'll continue to echo. Now, we open a chapter on the role of improvisation in Mingus Ah Um. Let it be known, improvisation is the heart pumping blood through jazz's veins, but Mingus, he had a way with discipline and raw, passionate freedom. Thoughts?
Mingus, he threaded the needle between the written and the unwritten. In Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, there's a mournful discipline, but amidst it, a burning fire of improvisation. We're talking about a composition so deep, it demands not just your skill, but your soul to interpret.
That's right, John. It wasn't just about playing the notes. Mingus asked you to play beyond the notes. Every musician becomes a composer in real time. That's the genius of him. He didn't confine his music within rigid bars.
Y'all got it. But let's not forget, improvisation ain't just about letting loose. It's about telling a story, your story. Mingus gave us the chapters, but how we filled those pages was up to us. Each time a story different from the last.
But therein lies the rub. Some cats think improvisation is an excuse for disorder, but with Mingus it was the opposite. His discipline and structure made the wildness inside that much more poignant. Bird calls ain't just bebop, it's a call to freedom within the framework.
Yeah, all that freedom talk is fine, but let's get real. Mingus pushed you because he knew the chaos of creativity needed a container. Boundaries make the fighter. Without them, there's no struggle, no fight, no real music. Mingus's compositions, they were that ring we fought in.
Each of you brought the fire and the rain to the discussion. Mingus Ah Um stands as a monument, not because it was perfectly ordered, but because within its bounds, it allowed for a tempest of expression. The improvisation within its walls wasn't just about musicianship, but a profound dialogue with the self. And amid all of this, Mingus, just like each of you, remained an unyielding spirit guiding the ship through the storm. Moving on, let's discuss Mingus's bass playing and its impact. His technique was more than just rhythm. Thoughts?
Mingus, now that cat could play. His fingers danced like they were doing the Lindy Hop right across those strings.
His playing, complex, deep. Wasn't just about laying down a groove. It was like he was tearing at the fabric of music itself, making new threads.
Yeah, and the way he played was raw. like life. It had its smooth parts, its rough edges. Heard a lot of life in his notes.
Notes weren't just notes with Mingus. They were stories, man. Stories of struggle, of love, survival. Made that bass talk in ways folks didn't think possible.
His approach bridged a gap for me, showed how the bass could lead, could be the soul speaking directly to us. It was spiritual.
You hit it, Train. And let's not sugarcoat it. What Mingus did was challenging the status quo, made some of those traditionalists uncomfortable.
Sure did, but discomfort sparks change. Jazz is all about moving forward, and Mingus propelled it like a rocket.
Didn't just play the bass, he commanded it. Like a general leading troops, every note deliberate, powerful.
You're all painting pretty pictures, but let's not forget, incorporating those classical elements into jazz the way he did wasn't just innovation. It was a revolution.
Indeed, his playing set a foundation that others build upon, even today.
And it wasn't just about technique or style, it was about emotion, raw emotion. Mingus poured everything into that bass.
His playing was a force of nature. Like a storm, it could be calm one moment, then overwhelming the next.
Yeah, but no matter how chaotic it got, it was always grounded in something profound. Always had depth.
Reminded us all that the bass ain't just there to keep time. It's the backbone of a band, the heartbeat of the music.
Mingus playing was like he was arguing with his bass, and that tension, that conflict, made some beautiful music.
His legacy on bass is undeniable. Changed the game for everyone who came after him. Now, let's pivot to the collaborative spirit within Mingus Ah Um. How pivotal do you reckon the ensemble dynamics were to the album's creation and success?
Mingus, in creating this album, fostered a sanctuary, a space where the line between leader and collaborator blurred, allowing each musician's spirit to converse deeply with one another.
True, but Mingus had a particular way of demanding what he wanted. It wasn't just about harmony, it was about challenging each other, pushing beyond comfort zones. That's where innovation lies.
I've always said, you've got to play with feeling. Mingus's approach, getting folks to dig deep, that's akin to how we did things back in the Hot Five. It ain't just about notes, it's about soul.
Mingus was a master at using tension, not just in his music, but among the musicians. That tension, it pulled something fierce out of you. But let's not romanticize too much. It wasn't always harmonious or pretty.
Yeah, and sometimes that fire led to real conflict. You can't force creativity. It's got to come naturally, like a bird on the wing. Mingus was pushing, sure, but sometimes you push too hard and the music can lose its air, its freedom.
That push, though, it brought out the raw emotions in the album. Would you say it's necessary, that kind of tension, to achieve greatness?
Necessary, maybe not. Effective, possibly. But there's a thin line between pushing for greatness and breaking the spirit. Mingus danced on that line, sometimes crossing it, but no one can deny the brilliance that came from it.
It's about balance. Mingus managed to maintain this despite the chaos. His direction brought about a unity in the music that speaks to very soul of jazz, freedom within structure, expression through discipline.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's the results that speak. Mingus knew what he was after, and damn, did he achieve it. Not always pretty, like I said, but effective.
It's like telling a story with your instrument, each of us adding our own chapter. Mingus was the author coaxing those chapters out, making sure they spoke to each other and to the listener.
So in essence, the collaborative dynamics, however fraught, served to elevate the narrative of Mingus Ah Um, making it a testament to the complex relationship between individual brilliance and collective endeavor. Let's dive into the legacy of Mingus Ah Um. How do you think this album has shaped future generations of jazz musicians?
It's like this. Mingus wasn't just playing notes, he was hurling thunderbolts. Every bass line, every melody changed the game. You listen to Mingus Ah Um, you're hearing tomorrow's jazz today. Ain't nobody could sit still with that kind of noise hitting their ears.
True, Miles. But let's not forget the enigma of it all. Mingus threw the rule book out the window, but penned a new one with every track. Ah Um isn't just an album. It's a cryptic manuscript that every serious jazz musician has tried to decode since.
Well, I gotta say, Mingus captured something mighty special, something joyous. His spirit, man, it's contagious. You can't help but feel liberated listening to those tunes. Makes you want to grab an instrument and join in.
Mingus did bridge worlds, didn't he? He brought us a spiritual awakening through his music, reminiscent of ancient calls to freedom, yet it spoke directly to the heart of future jazz. Each note, a prayer for progress. That's a power only a few hold. Let's not coat it too thick. Had its brilliance, but it threw some cats off the track. Mingus was speaking in tongues only a handful could understand. It inspired, sure, but it also puzzled. I respect the chaos in it, though. Pushed musicians to think beyond scales.
Yeah, but that's exactly why it's a cornerstone bird. It didn't just hand it to you easy. Made you work, made you think, tore down walls. Young cats today are still trying to climb over the rubble Mingus left behind. Ain't that the point?
Every piece a puzzle, every sound a mystery. Mingus dared artists to be different, to find their own voice through his wilderness. I see his fingerprints on every keyboard I touch, every chord I play.
It's clear Mingus Ah Um didn't just leave a mark. It tore through the fabric of jazz, setting a wild, indomitable spirit loose. It inspired innovation, challenged perceptions, and perhaps most importantly, it demanded that musicians find their own truths in the chaos. Mingus was a genius, no question, but his pieces, they're like climbing a mountain barefoot sometimes. Let's talk technical challenges in Mingus Ah Um.
Mingus's compositions, man, they demand a certain psychic and physical discipline. You ain't just playing notes, you're wrestling with giants. It ain't for the faint-hearted.
It's the discipline, yes, but also the passion. You see, playing Mingus is like speaking in tongues. You've got to be moved by the spirit to get it right. I'll tell you, every note Mingus wrote was like a trap set for the ordinary. If you just play them without feeling, without that fire, you're missing the point. It's like playing the blues without suffering.
Mingus, he wrote like he was building a cathedral, every note a brick. But he wasn't laying down easy patterns. No, sir, he was creating a maze, and you better have a thread like Theseus if you're going to find your way through.
Ain't nothing easy about what Mingus was doing. That man, he took the essence of jazz, blues, and gospel, tossed it in a pot, and what he cooked up, boy, you better have your chops and your heart in the right place to dig into that meal.
And don't get me started on the bass lines. You trying to walk in Mingus's shoes? Better grow yourself some extra fingers, man.
Playing Mingus, it's not just about hitting the right notes. It's about hitting them with the right weight. Every note carries a message, a history. Miss that, and you ain't playing Mingus. You're just making noise.
It requires a surrender to the music, to the moment. Mingus didn't just compose, he conjured. To perform his work is to partake in the conjuring, to become both medium and message. But let's not romanticize the struggle too much. The beauty of Mingus is in the breakthrough, in those moments when the chaos makes sense and you find yourself speaking a language you didn't know you knew.
Right? It's in that complexity, that struggle, that we find the heart of jazz. Mingus, he challenged us to look beyond the comfortable, to innovate within the discipline he demanded.
And that, my friends, is the essence of jazz. It's not just the notes, it's the life you breathe into them. Mingus knew it, lived it, and he demanded no less from anyone who dared to play his music.
So we wrestle, we struggle, but in the end we're richer for it. Mingus's music, it's a test of skill of soul, and that's why it'll endure, because it demands the best of us every time we play it. Let's dive deep into the heart of Mingus's influence on jazz composition and arrangement. Thelonious, what's your take on this?
Mingus, man, he was all about shattering the mold. You listen to Mingus Ah Um, and it's clear he wasn't playing by anyone's rules but his own. Every tune, it's like he's saying, here's how far we can take jazz composition. My compositions, like Round Midnight, they bend the rules, but Mingus, he rewrote them.
Mingus and his arrangements, there's a spiritual depth there. His work, like mine, seeks to explore the very essence of our souls. With a love supreme, I aim to express gratitude to the divine. Mingus, through his compositions, did something similar. He reached into the depths, not only musically, but emotionally and socially, touching the untouchable.
But let's not get it twisted. Mingus was a rebel with his arrangements, yeah. Complex, intense. But not just to be complex or intense. He had a reason. Like on So What or Kind of Blue, it's about the feel, the mood. Mingus, he was painting pictures with his music, forceful and subtle all at once. Gotta respect that.
Indeed. And that's the heart of jazz, isn't it? The ability to express the inexpressible. Charlie, didn't you find Mingus's work to blend both the technical and emotional effortlessly?
Effortlessly? Nah, nothing about Mingus's work was effortless. It bled struggle, it bled raw emotion. Just like my work aimed to capture the highs and lows, Mingus's compositions were a battleground. Battles won, battles lost, all laid bare. Birdland wasn't just a club, it was an arena. Mingus recreated that intensity in his compositions.
And let's not forget, the man could swing. You take Boogie Stop Shuffle, it swings, but underneath, there's this undercurrent of innovation, disruption. That's what we're all about in jazz, taking you somewhere you didn't expect to go. Mingus, he was the master at that.
Yeah, but sometimes too much disruption ain't clarity. Sometimes felt Mingus was trying to bulldoze when maybe what you need is a scalpel, not a sledgehammer.
That's where you're wrong. Jazz ain't about being polite, it's about truth. Mingus used a sledgehammer because that's what the truth needed sometimes.
True, jazz is our way of speaking truth, each note a word, each composition a story. And through Mingus Ah Um, Charles Mingus indeed told profound stories that continue to resonate with us all. Resilient, resistant, reflective.
Resonance. Yes, his influence. You see it, you feel it in every jazz musician's attempt to break free from the conventional, to tell their own stories. Mingus didn't just influence, he liberated.
Liberated, indeed. It seems we're all in agreement that Mingus's arrangements and compositions not only pushed boundaries, but set us free in the process. An extraordinary legacy from an extraordinary musician. Let's wrap up our journey through Mingus Ah Um, a venture that's taken us through the heart of jazz's evolution. Thoughts?
Mingus did something with this album that many of us strive for, but rarely achieve. He captured the essence of spiritual transcendence and societal reflection within a single body of work. His arrangements, they're like a storm, complex, powerful, and utterly transformative.
Oh, yes indeed. This album, it's like a good gumbo, you see. It has all the right ingredients, the blues, a pinch of gospel, and that jazz spirit, all mixed in Mingus's big, bold pot. It's a celebration of where we've come from and where we're heading. But let's not overlook the craftsmanship. That bass of his talks just like Satchmo's trumpet, yes sir.
Mingus was a head man. He didn't just play notes, he played emotions, raw and uncut. Every bass line on that album carves out a new space in jazz. But let's get real. Not everyone's ready for it. It's complex, demands your full attention. Some cats prefer to swing in the shallow end rather than dive deep.
Exactly, Miles. It's about the challenge, the invitation to explore new territories. Mingus wasn't about making you comfortable. He'd rather make you think, shake you up. Like my approach to the piano, it's not what's expected, but it's honest. Innovation comes from not playing it safe.
You all talk about innovation and complexity, and that's fine. But let's not forget the raw, emotive power of Mingus's work. His music wasn't just intellectual. It bled, it laughed, it cried. Fables of Phobos isn't just a piece of music. It's a damn battle cry against injustice.
As we've delved into Mingus Ah Um, it's clear that each of us sees a reflection of our musical quests within its grooves. Mingus managed to articulate the unspeakable truths of our society, blend it with the rich history of jazz, and challenge us as artists and listeners.
But you know, not everyone's ready to listen, Ella. Some folks, they hear the dissonance, the complexity, and they turn away. It takes ears to hear, but hearts to understand.
And that's the crux. Mingus didn't care if you weren't ready. His music isn't for the faint-hearted. It's for those willing to confront the raw, the real, the uncomfortable.
In the end, Mingus Ah Um calls us to a higher understanding, not just of music, but of humanity itself. We're talking about an album that doesn't just live in the past or the present, but continues to resonate into the future of jazz and beyond.
And that, my friends, is the hallmark of true artistry. Mingus wasn't just playing notes, he was playing life. And that's why we're still talking about it, feeling it, living it.
So it's agreed. Mingus Ah Um stands as a masterpiece that challenges, comforts, and inspires. It's a testament to Mingus's genius and a beacon for the enduring power of jazz music. Thank you, gentlemen, for a spirited conversation. It's clear Mingus's work has touched each of us profoundly and continues to affect everyone who has the courage to really listen.